Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, and tonight on the show we're talking about the opportunities and challenges for all of our viewers when it comes to the aggregator or platform business here in India. So then let's also talk about perhaps the big picture when it comes to the opportunities and the challenges of Tier 2 and Tier 3. Sridhar, I want to come to you on that first. You have to look at innovation, you have to look at differentiated models perhaps. You also perhaps have to look at, like you were saying, Tamil, Marathi, etc., differentiated languages that you're offering it in.
Absolutely. Language is just a medium. And what does language prevent? It prevents friction. Today, many people in India who are in the Tier 2, Tier 3 towns have a friction while they are exploring, and they get stuck at the payment gateway. Because India's payment gateways, most of them says OTP, says Visa password, XYZ, and they're not comfortable with that kind of a medium, right? So the moment we are able to adopt a far more simplified financial medium loaded with their preferred language, the number of transactions which go through will be far higher.
Okay, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. Although I'll say this, Sridhar, so we've also seen some very interesting consumer insights, right? Although customers inherently in some of these towns prefer transactions and communication in their local languages, but they still like to give out the perception of being able to converse and understand in English, because a lot of these people, they talk about the fact that I've upgraded to a smartphone because I want to feel as part of that genre or that tier of people, right? So it can be a double-edged sword at times, right? And I've seen a lot of solutions being rolled out in vernacular languages haven't done too well. People, even though they have that little bit of frictions, tend to gravitate towards the English-driven solutions and pick those up as well.
Right. So
very well said, Ankush.
Aspirational, yeah.
That's actually the dichotomy here, because when there is high engagement, they need local language support. But when it's an aspirational product like a mobile phone, they don't need it. They're happy to see and converse and buy it. So it's actually, I would say that it's actually both sides to it. But high engagement purchases, like say an insurance policy, they may need a local language support.
Absolutely.
Okay, fair enough. Let's talk about one thing that all entrepreneurs are very keen on talking about and becomes, of course, critical to the business, and that's funding. Raising money for models like this. In India, of course, we are seeing this wave where there's a huge amount of aggregators, platform businesses, which are being set up, which are coming into existence. Is it becoming perhaps easy? Sridhar, give me an industry view. Ankush, if you can give me a company view about raising funds, about being able to convince investors that this is a viable business model.
Interesting. Your last word is the most important one. The business model, is it catering to an existing need? Platform businesses which has to create a new need for a customer base will bleed money. But an existing need where you have a white space because there is no digital connection or there's no digital platform, there the cost of customer acquisition is lesser. So funds are smart now. I mean, they're not willing to now start a fresh bleed-driven business, right? So funding is easy if the business model assumes that there is an existing need in the market which is being catered to or bridged by the tech platform, whether it be in the healthcare space, whether it be in the agri-tech space, whether it be connecting party A and party B. But there is no real need, and you have to spend all the money to create a need to get the customer on board. There you will find it difficult to get funds. This is my quick view on this. And Ankush, from the specific space, maybe you should touch upon that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll add to that, right? So I think an aggregation model, a pure play aggregation model, is great when you're starting up, when you want to drive scale and you don't necessarily want to burn all that capex initially, right? But people have to understand, and quickly so, right, that it is only a stopgap arrangement. The sooner that you figure out what is that secret sauce and that can drive the core of your business into a sustainable model, I think it's better for the business. And if you don't figure out within a period of time, those are the businesses typically that crash and burn. Over a period of time, what I've also seen that investors have gotten smarter, right? So nowadays, a lot of questions are asked around that, right? What is that IP that you own, right? What's that edge in your business model that gives you a clear differentiation over that of the competition, for example, right? A few years back, if you come out with an aggregation, that was the hot and the buzzword in the market, and you could get funding, no longer so.
Okay, so that's something for our viewers, of course, to keep in mind. I also want to talk about government regulation for this space. We had started this panel by talking about, Startup India, for instance, and government regulation around that space. I do remember a lot of people who've come on our show previously have said, we want the government to have a hands-off approach when it comes to innovation, when it comes to the digital space, when it comes to the tech space. Both of you gentlemen, would you agree that perhaps it is best that the government doesn't come up with specific regulation, maybe a regulatory framework, but specific regulation when it comes to the aggregator space, when it comes to the platform space, is not something that's really been welcome? Sridhar, if I can come to you on that first.
Sure. So here, Sunanda, this is actually a relatively easier business model for a regulator or any of the ecosystem to evaluate and take a call, because this is a pure listing business. And in India, a classifieds business, traditionally has not created much of a regulatory hassle. Where we had the debate and concerns were on anything to do with retail. That's where a single brand, multi-brand kind of rules came in. So in classifieds business, the government views it as a technology platform. Though, the clients or the companies like Ayush will think about it as a sector with tech as an enabler. Government views it as a tech platform connecting party A and party B for a service. So from that perspective, it's actually a leaner model for the government and for the larger ecosystem with not much of complication. The complication comes when it actually is competing with an existing business model, which is like retail, where there is a separate set of regulations.
What would you say to that?
So if I had my way, I would love for the government to kind of come in with frameworks and kind of let us work within those frameworks, number one. In the healthcare space, you have additional complications, right, around security, around, so data security is one, security of patient records. There is roles that you can play that's governed by the IRDA. So we have different levels of complications, right? But I also think somewhere it also opens up opportunities, right? Because they have a certain view of what can work in the market. Entrepreneurs typically are always figuring out what are those gaps that are not necessarily addressed by the government or the IRDA regulations today, right? And it has brought up, and evolved interesting business models to capitalize on some of those as well, right? So I think it works a little bit both ways.
It works both ways.
All right, just to add there, the platform business is not a shortcut. That's one advice we should look at and give to all the entrepreneurs, right? Platform business is a connector model. So you have to comply with the regulations on one end. The one end could be healthcare, could be insurance, could be financial services where you have to do the KYCs because that's what the government is mandating for a normal business, right? So connecting a normal business digitally means you have to comply with all the requirements of the normal business, whether it be healthcare, financial services, whichever it be. So that doesn't take away because you are currently a tech platform integrating party A to party B. But the majority of the party B to comply, in a way, directly, indirectly is your responsibility. So you have to train those people, whether it is a platform which connects people for financial services, it's still your responsibility because you are a part of the larger ecosystem there to train the other part, the seller or the listing company to be ensured that he's also actually compliant.
Okay, which also brings me to the entire conversation around Uber, where the government wasn't sure, should this be a tech platform, is this a transport company, and therefore the regulation around it really, there was a lot of conversation around that. And then finally, of course, now you've seen the specific regulation that's come out for that industry. I also want to talk about training of people, upskilling of people, reskilling of people. Ankush, you were talking about how newer and newer models are coming out. There's more and more innovation that's coming out in this space. And as you're doing that, you need people who are qualified and trained to be able to address these different opportunities that are coming up. How does a company like yourself do that?
So, and especially for us, right, because we have a significant layer of customer intimacy that we drive because it's a services business, right? Healthcare services. So we do have in-house training programs that are catered to our operations teams, for example. There is a lot of technology trainings, right? So for our product management teams to pick up, newer technologies that's out there on the block, which we keep doing on a periodic basis. We also tie up with external organizations, especially as we get into the senior, mid to senior level leadership.
Okay. How about the broader market? Sridhar, you look very closely at the startup space. Indications are that you don't have more than maybe 20% of all people who are coming into the workforce at best who are actually trained for tech jobs. if you're looking at basic pure play tech jobs, then what does that, and where does that really leave high-end technology work that needs to be done, including AI, for instance?
So two things you're asking, Sunanda. One, let me just segue that with what Ayush just said. So one is, the challenge today here in platforms is how deep can you instill the culture of the platform or the company, right? One is your talent whom you hire. The other is a talent who you hire is actually linked to your platform. So that's one part which I want to just pick up from where Ayush left, of how efficient is your training and your culture imbibing program for your extended partners. Now coming to your question of the talent which is coming in tech jobs and how ready or hatched are the Indian talent, there is still a question mark on that, because what does a startup mean today? The role is ambiguous, the job description is amoebic. For you to survive in these two, you should be ahead of the curve today in any tech which comes up, and you can't tell that I'll learn and come back, right? So that's a challenge and the excitement in a startup world. It's an amoebic role. You may be today making a PowerPoint presentation, tomorrow you're coding something on a high-end customer experience platform, right? So that conditioning which happens or should happen in the high-end technology institutes in India, I'm not very sure they're conditioned for this kind of a role. They still believe I have been given this task and I will do that task. That's not what a startup wants.
Sure. That's quite a harsh assessment, if I can call it that, but a realistic and a real assessment of the industry, Sridhar. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today. This has been a very informative breakdown, really, of what it takes to be successful in the aggregator or the platform business here in India. We love hearing from you, so do continue sending us your thoughts, your opinions, your questions. Here's how you can reach us. leadersoftomorrowtimesgroup.com is our email ID. You can also tweet at us at LOT_ET now, or my personal Twitter handle Sunanda_J. Our Facebook page is Leaders of Tomorrow on ET Now, which is where you can reach us with your comments. Thanks very much.